your reaction to the Los Angeles Lakers with 17 championships, I think 35 finals appearances, arguably the most valuable team in the NBA, inarguably actually, arguably the greatest team in NBA history, deciding JJ Redick should be their next head coach.
Look, I mentioned it yesterday. I think they should have looked at Monty Williams. Now, and I heard, and other people talked about it and were like, well, the timing, if it was a little different. Why? You waited this long. And look, you'd like to have a coach before the draft. But it is this draft pick for the Lakers, it's not like essential that you had a head coach in place. They tried to hire Monty a few years ago. He said went to Phoenix. I know it didn't work out in Dallas or in
also,
Detroit.
Are we to believe JJ's been scouting the draft? Like a heavy?
Right.
Like,
I mean, it's just right.
I don't think that matters.
He's going to give a little input, and that'll be that. Anthony Davis had a great relationship with Monty Williams when he was in New Orleans.
Of course.
And was upset when they fired him, had a great relationship with his family, said he cared more about the players as people than Monty. I think that, again, at least interview him. Consider it. See what he would do with the team before you go out and make this hire. Look, JJ, maybe will he be harder? Will he coach LeBron? Because on the podcast, he does push back a little bit. So maybe he'll coach LeBron and do what they need. But it's just a complete, question mark as to how good he's going to be.
I mean, it's a hell of a gamble for the end of LeBron's career. It would be objectively hilarious if LeBron didn't go back to L.A. After all this, launch a podcast with the guy, he goes to L.A., and then LeBron's like, I think someone else might be better off coaching me. So, I mean, it's Hollywood. It's a compelling story.
Well, so it's a compelling story, and so much of the Lakers' business is based on compelling stories.
Yes.
I'm glad you brought up the LeBron thing because I want to address that. It would be unfair of me to say JJ Redick's not going to be a good NBA head coach, just like it would be unfair of me to say he's going to be a good NBA head coach because he is being hired with as thin, I can say this off the top of my head knowing it's true, as thin of a coaching resume as any coach that's ever taken the job in modern NBA history. Because it couldn't be thinner. It's just to never be a part of an NBA staff, front office, and to coach at the big-time high school, let alone college, G League, NBA, none of that. You couldn't have a thinner coaching resume. So there's nothing to judge it on other than vibes and guess. So I don't know. I am skeptical. My biggest concern with JJ, honestly, is he appears to me to be very, very online and very, very aware of criticism of himself.
Yes.
And I think that can be a real detriment if you're the head coach of a basketball team.
In L.A.?
In L.A.
You can't have rabbit ears.
That's what I mean. Head coach of the Lakers, I should say, more so than anything. The LeBron piece, though, if I may just pivot it there quickly on the fly. Just because you want to do a podcast with a guy is not, to me, evidence you want him to be your head coach. And I'm not saying, again, I give the audience my word. I have not talked to LeBron, anyone in his camp, about this. I am simply saying, just logically speaking, there are plenty of people that I adore or would adore working with that if they were like, hey, we need a new showrunner for First Things First. What about Danny? I might be like, hey, love him on the show, love him as a guy, think we could maybe get someone with a little more experience at it. So the reason I'm saying that is this idea that they are doing this to appease LeBron assumes this is what LeBron wants. And the one piece of info we do have definitively is when they were interviewing Dan Hurley, LeBron reached out to Dan to tell him he would have his support and his buy-in if he were there, if he stays.
Hold on, though.
Yeah. And I think he'll stay.
Right. I mean, you're right. It's not a guarantee that LeBron wants the guy that he hosts a podcast with to be his head coach. But it's a pretty safe assumption that LeBron's on board with this, right?
Well, so I think...
Yeah, I'm sure he's on board at the very least. No question.
It'd be a hell of a coincidence.
I don't think he might not like the hire. I can't see any way he doesn't like the hire.
I guess my point is this. You have heard the same thing I have heard, Brew, which is he has not chimed in with the Lakers front office. He is staying out of it. We know he endorsed to the other guy another guy. So if I was really hoping someone was going to get a job and then someone else that I don't have a long-standing relationship with is interviewing for that job, I might not submarine the guy's chances, but I wouldn't call him and give him a vote of confidence if I was super stoked about the other person. So again, this is, I'm being totally candid. It's pure speculation. But I just think people are assuming because Bron likes JJ doing the podcast with him that he likes the idea of having to play for him. I don't know if that is or isn't true.
But I think that is a fair assumption or a logical assumption for people to make. And I agree with you. We've talked to people that I don't think LeBron had anything to do with this hire. But it is logical for people to assume that he's the greatest player in the franchise and he's had say in franchises before and he's doing a podcast with the guy. So I don't think people are, can blame people for jumping to that conclusion. I will say this too. Most of the players who have coached without any experience were either kind of removed from the era in which they played. Pat Riley, I know he was like an assistant, but Steve Kerr, who worked with the Suns and ran their front office but hadn't coached.
Mark Jackson.
He was removed, right. Or the second thing I was going to say, or they were more respected players. And JJ was a solid player. He was respected in that regard. Mark Jackson was not a star.
He's an
but he was
all-star, though, at one point.
Yeah, I think he made one
Yeah,
all-star
that's what I
team.
mean, yeah.
But
Ty
he
Lue,
was
Jason
highly
Kidd.
respected as a top, that tier player. And Ty Lue, though, was an assistant for a while.
Yep.
So I'm saying guys that went straight to head coaching, Larry Bird. Obviously, you respect Larry Bird. Steve Magic,
And
right.
even though
And
Magic didn't
do
work.
well. Nash didn't do well, but he had people's respect. Isaiah Thomas, who had worked for franchises, obviously, but he was a guy, he's a legend. So I think the questions, JJ was just playing 3 years ago.
Right.
And a lot of these guys remember taking him to the hole.
Yeah.
Being able to play better than him. And so I wonder if that could be something he has to overcome as well.
I'm sure we'll have more on this in a bit, but we're going to step aside for a moment. Coming up next, will Caleb Williams, I'm not asking this question, be the worst quarterback in the NFC North?
Wow.
I mean, I don't know. Is the NFC North trading for